Hi guys, welcome to Alté Ldn podcast. We're back again for another episode of our second series. It's me, Fia, and we also have
Charlene.
Oh, very, very abrupt. Okay,
it's very,
I liked it.
Become with a different vibe.
Yeah. So, obviously, you guys know that this series we're focusing more on more important context, big discussions, serious discussions. That's really what our second series is about. Again, we said in the beginning of our episode last week, we don't know everything, and we're not claiming to know everything. We just want to speak on things that our communities aren't necessarily speaking about, and we also want to try and inform you guys where we can. So we have made sure to do reading on this particular subject that we're going to talk about this week, and then we've got a lot of notes because there's so much to discuss. And so
I would say as well, the intention is definitely not to offend. We're both not offensive people. Yeah. However, I think do listen to what we're saying, and it is okay to have different opinions. So I think, let's be clear. So I think, just listen to wait to listen to what we
we both have different standpoints on different things. And so there's things in this episode in particular we really want to talk. We each differently want to speak about. So yes, with that said, our topic for this week is LGBTQIA plus. We're going to get into that, what is it about, the history of it, the people who it affects, the way that people of those communities are treated within the community, the general community, as well as the Black community specifically, allies, all that sort of thing. I'll just get straight into it. So what is LGBTQIA plus?
Can I just say something before you do that?
Yeah, go for it.
We just spoke about this, but I actually hate the word allies. What's an ally? I don't actually like that word. But
it seems
I feel like allies is just a cop out. You're either cool people or you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get into that later.
I feel like that is just centering straight people again, and that's just not, because who ally whatever. But
it's not even just with that. Also with with racism as well.
I'm an ally.
Fuck off.
Just don't be
just
a dick.
treat everyone the same.
Yeah,
treat everyone cool, even if you don't. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah,
what is LGBTQIA?
So what is that? So it's an initialism. I cannot pronounce, but that stands for.
Is it an acronym?
Yes, it's an acronym or an initialism. I was gonna say initialism. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, acronym. Yes, for lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans or transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual. So what they all mean separately. So lesbian is someone who identifies as a woman and they're attracted to women. Gay is someone who identifies as a man and they're attracted to men. Bisexual is being sexually attracted to both genders. Trans is a gender identity that differs from their sex assigned at birth. Being queer, it's quite a broad term, and it's inclusive of people who are not straight or cisgender. And if you guys don't know what cisgender means, that just means that someone who identifies with the sex that they were born with. So that's being cisgender. So that would be myself or Charlene. I identify as being a female, so does Charlene. So that we're cisgender. So that's what being queer is. There's also questions. There's 2 Q's sometimes when we're referring to LGBTQIA plus, and that's questioning. So questioning is people who are exploring their sexual orientation or even their gender or their gender expression. So if you weren't really sure, so if you weren't really sure, do I identify as gay? Do I identify as bisexual? Am I just against the other terms as well? Am I, which leads us into intersex maybe, which means
what does that mean?
So what that means is an individual whose sexual anatomy or chromosomes do not fit with the traditional markers of female and male. And then lastly, A, which is asexual. So that's an individual who generally does not feel sexual desire or attraction to any other group of people, So they're just, not very interested in sort of sexual relationships, I would say, romantic relationships. Lastly, this is not included in the acronym, but pansexual. So pansexuality is a person who experiences sexual or romantic or spiritual attraction to members of all genders. So it doesn't really matter about what gender there are. It's just really about personality. So someone who doesn't fit into the gender, so it's the standard gender binary. So that's just a little bit.
Can we take it back though?
Yeah,
so intersex is what I don't really understand.
Intersex is one that I somewhat understand it, but it's basically, let me find a better description, because I thought that would be a confusing one.
I was gonna say, Nick, if you can just say what you said before though, regarding intersex.
Intersex. What did I say? Sorry.
It was something to do. I don't want to.
Is it cisgender?
So I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to lie to you. I don't want to misquote you. So, but yeah, intersex is something that I've just not heard of. And when you explained it, or when you said definition, I didn't understand what you meant by that.
I'm going to try and get a better definition. So intersex is a general term used for a variety of situations in which a person is born with a reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't fit boxes of female or male. So sometimes doctors do surgery on intersex babies and children to make their bodies fit binary ideas of male or female. So it's just really to be born with to do with what you're born with, your anatomy.
So some people are born.
So I guess you could have a mixture. You could,
or a mixture
you could have
of both.
A mixture of both, exactly.
Yeah, I've heard that before, where sometimes they have to basically assign you one specific gender.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which can also on a bad side as well. Like if you grow up. No.
Is that different?
I'm not sure if that term is really used so much, but
okay.
So I think that can also be quite sad in the future, because imagine if your parents had chosen this particular sex and then actually when you grow up you don't actually identify that. So that's quite interesting as well to think about. That's basically what the LGBTQIA plus stands for. And there's so many different other terms as well that I haven't brought up, and guys, we want to say there's so much to discuss in this topic, so we're not going to be able to address all of it, so we're just going to try and keep it brief and informative, but give you guys as many facts as we can. But yeah, that's just a little bit about that. What else can we go? Another thing as well that's a lot of people get confused about is pronouns.
Right.
So with pronouns, which is a thing that a lot more people are speaking about now, and that just basically means what you identify as. So do you identify as a male, a female, or non-binary? So the different,
and that's become quite popular. Yeah. I guess maybe
I would say it's more
become. Yeah. What I mean to say is because it's become more prevalent in media and in the world now, with people, in conversations,
exactly,
where people are not identifying as he or she, but instead they, right?
Yeah, exactly. So just to get into more of that. So me personally, I identify as female, so my pronouns would be she, her, or hers. Same with Charlene's. People who identify as guys, which would be he, him, his. Those who are non-binary, which just means that you don't necessarily associate with either gender, or you associate with both genders. So there's not really. You just are as you are. Some days maybe you feel a little bit more masculine, maybe more feminine. But it's just really identifying with both or neither. And their pronouns would be they, them, theirs, which can get quite difficult for people, because if someone physically presents as female or male, you would naturally be he, his, and that can be quite disrespectful if you don't know what someone's pronouns are. So I think it is quite important. It's obviously you don't really start a conversation with hi, what are your pronouns? But maybe
I think it's becoming more.
Maybe it will become
definitely
more prevalent. That's coming in, because I've noticed now, and what our work has started to do as well is on application forms. People are able to select not just male or female, but non-binary or they, them, theirs. You know what I mean? That's coming out there now.
Question: Do you know anyone that's non-binary?
Do I know anyone? Yes, I do actually. I met someone a couple of months ago maybe, and they're non-binary, and they were actually female presenting. So I was just saying I was oh yeah, she and then they were actually oh no, actually I'm not a girl, and we were I was oh okay, fair enough, and they were no, actually I don't identify as either, I'm non-binary. I was okay, cool. And another element of that as well, so that because they're non-binary, that makes them then queer rather than a lesbian or a bisexual, because they are attracted to both genders, and because they're non-binary. So
I didn't know
so that's how,
so that makes sense. So now actually, so in a work situation we had, there was someone that identified themselves as queer, and so then maybe that might mean that they don't identify.
It doesn't necessarily mean that their pronouns would be they, them. I mean, but in their circumstance, I mean, as in my friend, they identified as queer because they were. Let me just find the definition of queer again, just so I can explain it again. So the queer definition. So it's inclusive of people who are not straight and or cisgender, So
So that's interesting. So we want to talk about in terms of like, obviously in social, in like media, I guess one of the most famous people that has come out as non-binary is probably Sam Smith.
Oh, of course. Yeah, they have.
That's what came to mind when I thought about it just now.
Yes,
and obviously they said that they would like to go as they them from now on, as you know, and then I feel like that was, you know, a sort of good coming out for them. Definitely. And let's be clear, like, you know, I want to talk about, when we're talking about this, I want to talk about the fact that obviously in our community, this is and I say our community, in the Black community, obviously this is a completely new concept. You know, if I think about like my parents, stuff like that, I don't think they don't intentionally hate anyone, like my parents will, but they just don't get it. And I think it'd be very, very difficult for them to adjust to referring to someone as them and they versus he or she. And it wouldn't be because they don't want to or because they particularly were opposed to it as such, but just because they're like, but it's he or she. So like the question is like, how do we get to a stage where we're able to really like help people understand that that's like, we have to go by how people want us to refer to them as. That makes sense? I think because I've tried to explain this to my mum as well, because it's the same thing as well, that like she's just not understanding. She's like, yeah, but why and I can only think of it as like in a selfish point of view. So if someone was calling me something that I didn't identify with, how would that make me feel? And then straight away in my head, my brain just switches. I'm like, okay, great. So I know that if I'm calling this person like a he and they actually identify as a they or a them, how would that make me feel? And like then that just sort of puts it into perspective for you. That's how I explained it to my mum, and she was kind of like, oh, okay, like fine, I also want to say though, to those that are in the community, obviously I can understand that it can get frustrating when people are referring to you as something that you're not, or that's something you don't identify with. However, I would say that, you know, I would hope for, you know, a little patience, just because sometimes it can get difficult. It is difficult to adjust like someone's mindset. I'm not saying it's on you, but it's just like, obviously if you are, you know, male or female presenting, that's unfortunately, we always say that like you see someone and that's the first image you see of someone's how they tend to stick in your mind from the get-go. It's definitely hard to change people's perceptions. So I think there's a lot of people out there that are trying to make sure that we're respecting of, you know, people and how they would like to be identified. But I probably would say there's a lot of people that would do it that might offend like non-intentionally, and so I just hope for like sort of a bit of patience with that, and hopefully we can sort of come to a place where we can respect, you know, how you want to be referred to, because it is difficult. I'm not gonna lie, we are in a situation where, I don't want to say it so baitly, how can I say it? Okay, well, we are acquainted, let's say, with someone who who refers to you as non-binary, and like it is hard when you're talking or referring to someone not saying he when they might be male presenting. Like it is difficult, but it's, you know, we try.
I think it's definitely about the
definitely try, like
it's definitely about like the efforts, and I think also like being apologetic as well is quite helpful, because like you were saying, of course, like if you've met someone, you're assuming, this is the thing we shouldn't assume, but yeah, we do naturally assume like unconscious bias and all that when we see people, and I really think it's like people appreciate a lot more if you're honest about it, like I'm really sorry, like I didn't mean to say that, I know that you identify as this or that, so yeah, I think like just like taking some accountability as well is also like quite helpful for that person. But yeah, I see what you're saying as well. So yeah. With that said though, I think we should like go even further back into history and talk about the Stonewall Riots. So the Stonewall Riots is basically like the catalyst of like what we know today. Well, not what we know today, but it's the result of that is basically gay pride. And the Stonewall Riots started from June the 28th to July the 3rd, 1969. So that was about 51 years ago now, and it took place at the Stonewall Inn in New York City. So it was raided by police in the early hours, and like there were 3 nights of unrest that followed, with LGBT people long frustrated by police brutality, because a lot of the time like police were just picking on those communities just for no reason, and that they would face a lot of police brutality, and like they were finally just taking a stand saying, do you know what, we're not standing for this anymore. So like lesbians and trans women women of colour in particular were at the forefront of this movement. There were some of the key people. So we have people like that we know, like Marsha P. Johnson, which is quite a big name. So Marsha P. Johnson was a trans female activist who, she was at the forefront of Stonewall Riots, and she also liked to help people who are homeless or ostracized from their families because of their sexuality. So she was really there for the community, and she was unfortunately diagnosed with with HIV in the 1990s. As you said, that's what led to Pride. So that's basically the Gay Liberation Front was the main organizer for the event. Not for the event, for the riot, sorry. And that formed out of the uprising for these wider movements. So the GLF first formed in the US and were part of the original discussions that were there to create the first Pride, which took place in June the 28th in 1970 in New York City. So that makes sense as to why it's around that July time. Almost like the anniversary of the end of the situation. And it was originally called the Christopher Street Day Parade. I'm not sure if they still call it that now in New York. They might do, because obviously that was the original place. But yes, that's why it takes place in like the summer times. And obviously Gay Pride now has it takes place all around the world. I believe most major cities have a Gay Pride event. Yeah, exactly. And also then there's Pride Month and Pride Week and things like that I guess have stemmed from that as well. Exactly. And then speaking of HIV and AIDS, there was actually, I'm not sure if you know about the epidemic that happened in the United States sorry guys, I've got a lot of notes. I've been very studious. So it was a HIV AIDS epidemic in the US, and it sort of started around the early 1970s, and researchers say that the spread of HIV in the US started in New York, but that there was actually no patient zero. However, allegedly it was stated that there was a guy who entered the US who slept with a flight attendant, which actually caused the spread. Unfortunately this really affected the poorer communities, especially the African American communities or the Hispanic communities, very much so. And a lot of them were not able to be treated because either didn't have the money for it or just access to healthcare in general. And in history we know that HIV/AIDS medication is very, very expensive. So exactly. Let's think especially about the main people that we know. The main people we know that were affected by it. So one being Freddie Mercury, who obviously passed away in the end, I believe, of HIV/AIDS. And obviously he was an openly gay man, but if you've watched the Bohemian Rhapsody, or if you read a bit about that, that he went through a few trials and tribulations. He had a girlfriend for a long time, and he sort of came out really toward the end of his career. But that's interesting because I think people you said sort of think he was I guess camp, and I don't know if that's an offensive word. I don't think camp is offensive actually. Camp can be used for many. Camp is just really over the top, isn't it? That's the definition of camp. Cool. So he was I know that they I don't he was flamboyant, isn't he? So very flamboyant, and so that became a topical conversation. But interesting enough, I think that people try to kind of, I would say, weaponize, if you like, the HIV and AIDS situation. And the reason why I say that is because you have people like Magic Johnson, who's arguably one of the most famous basketball players of all time, who is straight and has been married for many, many years, but has HIV/AIDS, and because he contracted it years ago, there was so much question surrounding he has to be gay or he has to be this or that, when that actually isn't the case. And I don't believe we know exactly how he got it, but he's been able to conceive children and things like that. Against it, exactly. And so I think that's what's important, because in the black community especially, we just always associate that with being homosexual or homosexual, exactly. and that doesn't have to be the case. And a lot of the time it was education as well. Then people weren't using condoms, which is a lot of the reason why these things were spread. So if you're from these certain communities and you're not educated about that, or you're not given access to condoms, I'm not sure how much condoms were in the 1970s, but I don't know how accessible they were. So of course these things are going to happen. But even today though, even today, I'm not 100% sure of the statistic, but I know that Magic Johnson does a lot of things, in terms of speaking for
speaking on behalf of that community of people that have it and things like that. And I believe, and he's offering things like free testing and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's not without, we know, everyone knows that, the reason why he's been able to live such a healthy life is because he has the money, because I believe the medication is very, very expensive. But he's actually a great example of someone as well who's, I would say, advocate for the community, given his son, who I don't know how he identifies, EJ Johnson, but I'm not actually sure.
Oh yeah, I'm not too sure actually.
But he is in the LGBTQIA plus community, we can safely say that. And so that's interesting. And so people again were like, okay, this is weird. So you had HIV or AIDS. No, it is actually HIV. He's had HIV, and now you've got a son within the community, like, no, like, you're a mad suspect. It's like, no, he just has HIV, and he happens to have a son that's in the community, and that's it. Like, there's really not much more to it. I think people are always trying to search for like a link when there really isn't one. Like those two things are not like mutually exclusive. So, and like
I think, and also just like, it doesn't have to be, I mean, of course, like back then as well, it's like a devastating thing to get HIV, and it still is devastating to get it, but we have to understand that people can live with it, and you can be non-transmittable. Is that the word? Because I know there's medication that you can take, and then like, you can have sex safely and not pass it on to people. So like that's something that we need to know about as well. Like there has to be so much more education behind it, and like not such a negative stigma. But also
it is 100% agree, but also we have to make sure that we're informing people. Like, it's not okay to have it, and even if you've got it under control and you've got medication stuff, it's not okay to have it and not inform like a potential sexual partner. Like, that's just not okay.
Definitely,
that's not okay at all. So but no, there is such a stigma surrounding it, and to be honest with you, I'm not really well versed or educated on it either, but I think just because of Magic Johnson, because I'm a basketball fan, I just happened to like read a few things about it. But it's, I believe it's especially prevalent within the Black community because of the lack of education. So we got to do better, guys. Like, we've got to.
I mean, so that was from from the 1970s to now. There's actually been 675,000 to 7,500,000 deaths since then because of HIV/AIDS. And then like moving on now, so that did obviously affect like a lot of the poorer Black or Hispanic communities. A lot of those people that it did affect were trans women as well. So that leads us into like being trans. So being trans is just basically when you are born with a sex that you don't identify with. So then you may transition. You may not transition, as in like you may not change the sex that you were born with, but you may maybe you were born as with male sex, but then you identify as a female. You don't necessarily have to change your sex to identify as a female. But so that's being trans. And I can give you guys some statistics.
That's interesting, actually. Because I think people think that you do. Well, that's the thing. So that's interesting, because I mean, and then you get people that are like trying to say, oh well, you're being suspect, or you're like undercover trans. Like, I find that quite interesting. That's one thing that we have to move away from as well, especially our community. Just because someone doesn't look feminine enough or masculine enough does not mean that they don't have a right to identify, or it doesn't mean that you have a right to not call them what they identify with. If someone, I was gonna say, because I think about Young MA, and like, she's a female,
right?
But people would say, oh, she looks more on the masculine side. That's what they would say, and it's like, well, I don't know, it's weird, because there's this whole thing around that type of lesbian, right, who's like supposedly more masculine, and it's like it's just a bit weird to me. Like, people don't need to look a certain way to be a certain gender. Like,
no, definitely not. Exactly.
So like, it's just like, I just think that, like, I don't know, there's so many things that we're trying to fight against. Like,
so many,
that's
like,
one thing that we don't
things.
need to. That's one thing we just don't need to do. Like, and then remember there was that famous athlete.
Yes,
who,
of course.
They tried to. They took the piss.
Awful.
I believe she was from South Africa
because she's too fast.
She was from somewhere in Africa.
She's got too much testosterone. And it's just bullshit. Absolutely.
Well, no, they said that she looked too masculine.
Nonsense.
And then they tested her, and she's like, no, she's a feminine.
But then they were making her go on like hormone suppressant drugs, and she still won the races. So you look like stupid. She was still like smashing it up. So like, so it's just bullshit. But we have to move away from that. Just because someone doesn't look feminine or masculine enough for you, we shouldn't like put our opinions on them, basically. Some really like sad trans statistics, mainly relating to trans women. 50% of trans women have been raped or sexually assaulted. 41% of trans people have attempted suicide at some point in their lives. The estimated life expectancy of black trans women is only 35 years old, which is just devastating. Like that's no quality of life whatsoever. And the reason for that oftentimes is met at the hands of violence. So like it can be situations where they haven't disclosed that, oh yes, I was born this gender, or well, I was born male. I've transitioned, and like maybe the guy that they're with don't like that, and then like they get into an altercation. The woman gets assaulted, and then she ends up getting killed. Those situations happened a lot. I think it's devastating. What do you mean, not disclosing?
That's devastating. Yeah, of course. No one deserves to be hurt or killed or anything like that, like at all. Like, but what do you think about them not disclosing?
I mean, I don't really think it's really anyone's business to know. I guess it depends on if you're getting into a sexual situation or not. But I think we have to, like, this is a fine line that we're treading here, because I'm not trans, so I don't think I have any right to say whether it's right or not to disclose.
Right, but I'm saying, so I guess it's more about, I'm not asking you to say for the whole community whether it's right or not. I'm asking whether you feel like that's something that would be important to you, actually, is the question.
I don't think so. No, I mean, like, I don't know, no. I mean, like, is it, I don't really think, I don't know. I've not been in that situation, but I would say, like, no for now.
Okay,
but
well,
like,
I would say yes. Like, that's how I feel.
Yeah,
I feel that if I were to enter a situation with someone who is trans, then I would want to know. Like,
oh yeah, of course.
Would want to know. So
I mean, I think it could be a conversation. Like if I'd be like, oh, okay, like, why didn't you tell me, that sort of thing. But I don't know if it's something I'd be like so angry about. Do you know what I mean?
I didn't say angry. I just said
some people get
some people
upset
like think some people would say though that like they don't feel like they need to. But I don't agree with that. I do think that it should be something that you should know, because might affect you moving forward in a relationship if you want to have things like kids and stuff like that. I believe that's that is an important conversation.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's true. But it's also at that person's discretion as well. I guess it's when they feel comfortable. So I'm assuming, like, by that point, maybe they've had like conversations and stuff like that, and then they might feel comfortable to reveal that. And this is actually interesting that you've said that, because actually, I'm not sure if you know about the situation that happened on Monday. So it's like Monday the 17th, so last Monday. This influencer called Eden the Doll, who's a trans influencer. She was actually attacked with her friends Jocelyn Flawless and Jocelyn White Rose, who are both trans women as well, when they're waiting for an Uber in Hollywood Boulevard. So like the situation, so like it was the same sort of situation. So basically, like, this is a really sad situation that happens a lot. Guys will see a trans woman, think she's like the buffest thing there, and then get upset when they find out that she's trans. It's like it's okay to say that you were attracted to a trans woman because she's a woman. That's fine. But this guy found out that she was trans, then started to abuse these women. It's like, and then everyone was like, they're men, they're trans, they're this, just abusing these women, and like stole Eden's phone, ran off with the phone. Like the girls were trying to run and get their shit back. They were met to like a group of like bystanders. No one was helping them. People were just like, that's the man, just like throwing out horrible abuse, throwing rocks at them. Like one guy then came and like hit one of them on the head with a crowbar. Like it was just a fucked up situation. And like this is the things that like trans women have to go through and stuff like that. Just because a guy was pissed off that he was attracted to a trans woman and he didn't know that she was trans, like that's just not even her fault. And then to be attacked because of that, it's ridiculous. And this was black men doing this to black trans women, and like this goes back to Black Lives Matter. I think that it goes back to Black Lives Matter though, because if Black Lives Matter, we have to, all Black Lives matter, black trans women matter, black LGBTQIA matter. We have to care about all of it.
But this is why I'm saying though that like there needs to be a lot more education, and that with education will come more acceptance, and that's the purpose of the conversation, right? Because we know that there's a lot of people in our community, in black community, who don't get it, and because they don't get it, they're like, fuck this, like they don't get it, therefore they're not trying to hear it, or it might not stand with a particular part of their community, or like how they, it's not cool.
But do you think they'll ever understand it? Because I feel like these people do understand, because people know what being trans is at this point. But like, what do you think? But what do you think that they would have to like learn? Like what how much more would they have to learn for them to be like, okay, like it's
First
fine
of all,
for me to like be attracted to trans women without me feeling a type of way about it? Like,
people in our community do not have all the information yet.
Right.
Like, our community is definitely behind in terms of like understanding everything surrounding LGBTQIA plus.
Right.
Like that's just fact. So, and the information isn't as available because the information is not being made as easily available in certain places than in others. For example, in Sierra Leone, which is where I'm from, right? And we'll might talk about that more in depth later. But like, you know, in West Africa in general, like that whole being in the community, being part of the community is still all like illegal, or if you can do it, it's got to be in secret. You can't do it in public, right? So the information is that, and
there's a lot of places that's illegal, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm saying, so like, you know, and so until it becomes a point where it's readily available, where there's people that can educate on it, that's when I feel like we're going to actually see change. But right now, to be honest with you, there's other focuses for our community, that at least for people in our community, such as trying to stay alive just for the simple fact of our colour, and then also you know, in places like Africa and stuff, they're dealing with like basic like government corruption, like where like people who can't even just live like a casual life because like the government are just teething everything left, right and centre.
I totally understand that, but what I'm saying is,
that's the thing. So go.
I was gonna say, what I'm saying is, why make it harder for these people? So I mean, like, just think about
I agree with that. I agree like at the end of the day, where we have these big issues, that someone who decides to, you know, that they would like to be with the same gender shouldn't really be important. That's actually how I feel about it. Like, I mean, that shouldn't be a focus for us. Or someone who decides to that they feel that inside that they feel that they are a different gender to how they were born. To be honest with you, that just shouldn't be important, because like we're trying to deal and trying to get like basic human rights. Like we're still trying to like get that. We're still trying to acquire that in the Black community.
Exactly.
So yeah, my thing is, we're trying to focus on actually being able to live like basically without like anything else. So I agree that, but I don't think the education is there, you know, and that's a conversation that you and I had, and maybe something we should share with our listeners, is that like, you know, when talking about this, there were certain things and you were like, well, no, like I don't think it's need to like talk about it, or there's not need to ask someone because like we already know. But it's like, actually no, like people that I know, like people in my surroundings and me, like there's still lots of information that we don't know about. So maybe it might take for
this is interesting.
a black activist to come and talk about it in, you know, to like in more places in our community, so people can really understand.
I think it's also like friendship, because we've spoken about this before as well, because you said that you don't personally like have any gay friends, or that you know of anyway.
Not right now.
Whereas I do. So like we're coming from like two completely different not opinions, but just experiences. Whereas like things that I feel like, oh yeah, people know that, Charlene's like, oh actually no, like I don't know this, like there's people that I know who don't know. So that for me is like quite interesting. Maybe it's interesting for you to like know what I do, just for the experiences I've had from having like gay friends or like gay siblings, stuff like that. So yeah.
So it's interesting enough, but in secondary school, like there was like, I went to all girls secondary school, well, for part of the time anyway, and there was like one openly lesbian girl, and like there was like it just wasn't a big deal, like it's just like she was mad cool. Shout outs to you, I don't want to bet your name out, but shout outs to you, like, but like she was mad fam. No one felt any way. Even one time there was one girl that decided that she wanted to be her ting, like they started to do a ting together, and like no one cared. Like she was mad cool, she was sick at art, and like it just wasn't a big deal.
I think like when you're young, it just
wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, I feel like when you're younger though, you don't, when you speak to like kids about stuff like this, they like really don't care. It's really when they get older and then experience more of society that then the prejudice starts to come within them, because like kids all they want to know is like, oh, like how does this happen, like why, and then they'll be like, okay, fair enough. They don't really like think of it that deeply. It's just really society that then makes them have these like warped perceptions of things. Yeah, no, exactly.
She was like literally no one cared. Like no, she was. We were probably maybe like 15 or so. Yeah. When she, I don't even really feel like she came out like that, to be honest. Like, I feel like everyone just kind of knew it at one point, and it was just like, okay. Yeah. Like it just wasn't deep, and like, I don't know if it's because we had a lot less to care about. We were children, so I mean we were definitely teenagers, you know, and we you know started to form our own opinions and things like that. But like even the people, like the girls that were like heavily into like their religion stuff, like no one cares, to be honest with you.
I think that's good.
So she never experienced any like like bullying or anything. She was one. In fact, she was one of the coolest girls in our year. To be honest, everyone was trying to be friends with her. So yeah,
that's good there. And like, well, moving on from the history, I think we can get into like pop culture. And I will stop talking. I've just got like one more thing to say.
No, you have to stop talking. Sorry, I don't mean that. It's just
no.
I think it's interesting to talk about things as we.
No. I just mean like I feel like I've been dominating this conversation because I've written like we've both written notes, guys. Like so one last thing. So like this sort of comes off the back end of trans women. A great documentary, if you guys have not seen, is Paris is Burning, which is so iconic. Paris is Burning is basically, let me just get a little description because I want to do it justice because it's literally like one of my favorite things.
So what is it, a documentary, a TV show? Or?
So no, it's, wait, let me get it. I think I closed the page, give me 2 seconds. Paris is Burning. Okay, so Paris is Burning is a documentary that focuses on the drag queens living in New York City and their house culture. So if you don't know like house culture, there's a house mother. So like she'll be like House of Elegance or whatever, and then she'll have her children. So like she's the main one who like does like the pageants or whatever, and then her children will be the ones who like bring her in, do dances around her, or compete in the pageants with her. Basically, that's what a house mother is, or a house. So it provides a sense of community and support for the flamboyant and often socially shunned performers. Groups from each house compete in elaborate balls. So like ballrooms are like I didn't even go into that, but ballrooms in New York were basically like big shows. Like they're like category is high street fashion or whatever, and the girls would come in with like their best like dresses, or like the trans women would come in, like it'd just be like a huge ball. And
that's become quite it's become back into the forefront.
It definitely
recently,
has.
We can talk about that
definitely
in a second.
So also it touches on issues of racism and poverty, and the film interviews like a number of like world-renowned drag queens. So like Willie Ninja, who was like a great voguer. He vogued like for like I've never seen anyone vogue like that in my life. Pepper LaBeija, and also Dorian
voguing, by the way, is a type of dance. Just
people. So yeah, I would recommend like maybe looking up. I don't want to describe it, but yeah, look up what voguing is, because voguing is just ridiculous. So people would vogue and whatever in the balls. And an interesting thing about there's one of the drag queens, Dorian Corey, in Paris is Burning. It actually came out like after she passed, she like left all of her clothes for her daughters, so like her house girls. So when she passed, she was like, yeah, I have my clothes, whatever, when I die. So they went into her closet and like got some of the clothes, and then there was like a big bag, like a long type of bag, and they opened it up and there was a dead guy in there. So like,
oh wow,
she had been like, she'd left this guy and wrapped it in this weird sort of bag thing that had like created his own juices in the bag. So like what's interesting and horrible about that is while she was recording Paris is Burning, like there was just this guy in her closet behind her when she's talking about her experiences. It's mad. But yeah, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, Paris is Burning, a great documentary. It just really highlights like voguing, and like it does touch upon the AIDS and HIV epidemic that we did speak about earlier. A lot of those drag queens in that have unfortunately died because of AIDS, and a lot of those trans women who were in there have also died at the hands of like men who have found out that they were trans women. So like it's a devastating end to that. But yeah, great documentary if you haven't seen it. Very informative. I 100% recommend. And that is me done with my bit.
Well, not so much, but yeah, to relate it to like popular culture at the moment. Obviously we've got Pose, a TV show, so I've heard so much about this. I haven't watched it yet, but everyone says that it's really good. So essentially it's just about the ball like community in New York.
Can I just say quickly, basically Pose is pretty much based off of Paris is Burning, so like that's why it's so interesting. So it's a ballroom scene. It's
based on ballroom scene in New York City, which is basically like a competition, right, for trans people, trans women specifically. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's something as well. So I mean, these are things that you can definitely like watch to I guess help educate you if you want to understand more about the community, and specifically I guess the trans community. And then, but interesting actually, something I want to talk about in popular culture is like, don't you find that like in TV shows you just often have that like token gay person? Like I feel like that happens a lot in like TV shows, that everyone like, and I guess in Right, and that's it's almost like having a token black person. Like, okay, cool, we're going to dash someone who's gay so that you can, so that we can seem like we're inclusive or whatever you want to call it, which I find almost non-inclusive. But then it's like the argument is it better to have that one person where they drag out a storyline, or rather than having none, you know? I guess
I think it just depends on how it's done, because a lot of the times when they have these gay characters, it's like, right, let's just get the most stereotypically gay person on screen,
right,
we're gonna make them this, we're gonna make them that, and like it's just over the top and like not what every gay person is about. So it's just like they're just furthering a stereotype, like, oh yeah, that's what gay people are, and it's like, no, actually they're not all under an umbrella. So because something I want to talk about, I've been recently, Sophia may or may not know this, maybe you do, no you do, I've been banging out One Tree Hill, like One Tree Hill. I've been like spending hours and hours a day watching One Tree Hill. Watching it again now though, like 15 plus years later, which is crazy to think about. So One Tree Hill, if you don't know, is a TV show that came out on the WB and / the CW, literally started in 2003, starring Chad McElmurray, and essentially it's about two brothers who hate each other and their journey to playing basketball, and then everything happens around them. That's essentially what it's about. But in the second season, which came out in 2004, there was actually a character who was like coming out as, I guess initially she was bi, and then I guess it came out that she actually was just like full-fledged lesbian. And so it made me think about it, especially when I knew we were going to be recording this episode. Like I was like, right, okay, like so back in the day, like I mean that came out 16 years ago, where I feel like, you know, it was still, you know, becoming a bit more popular to put those kinds of things on like TV or in like the, you know, in the sort of mainstream media. And obviously One Tree Hill is a big TV show, but yeah, I thought it was interesting how I did that. And actually what I do want to say is I think that whole situation, the way they played that out on TV was actually quite good, I thought. She was like Spanish descent, I believe, and she was sort of struggling with her sexuality and things like that, but she was also struggling to come out and things like that. But yeah, I thought that that's actually a good example of a show that I think did it, I would say, quite well. Obviously I'm not in the community, but I thought that like the way they did it was not like in a tokenistic way. Personally, I don't remember it, but like, yeah, I'll trust your judgment. I was going to ask you though, how do you feel about, well, it's not really like how do you feel about people who are not gay playing these roles? Because that happens a lot, and I know like a lot of the community are like not happy with that. So I'm not sure if the actress who played that is actually lesbian or not. I don't think she is. Because I mean the argument is really that they're taking roles away from those people from the community, which is what I think Pose has done so well, because it's about trans women, and it does use actual trans women in the show, which is just so like progressive and really good. I feel like a lot of people have started to do that more recently. Obviously 16 years ago is a whole other thing, but more so now, like people who are like getting casted for these roles are actually from the community, so maybe we are like moving forward in that sense. Well,
that's what I think that I don't think I'm pretty sure she wasn't she isn't gay or of the community, but what I will say actually is that I think unfortunately it's all a process. So even in terms of like that TV show and like having like people of colour on that show, you can definitely see that through seasons that they gently started to like dot people of colour as you move through seasons, just like how they're sort of approaching like the, you know, sort of the LGBTQIA plus like situation. So I think that but I 100% agree, and I feel the same. So I feel the same way about that in terms of having people in the community play people in the community on TV as I do about having black people play black people on TV. You know, there's lots of things going on about that right now. You know, you've got Zoe Saldana who played Nina Simone, who's a dark, beautiful woman, and that was just that's just ridiculous. Insult, like, so you know, but yeah, I agree, and so hopefully, obviously, we can move more towards that direction now. But yeah, it just made me think about, you know, how they're portraying that on TV. And in terms of like black TV shows, obviously you have like quite famously Empire, where you have Jessie Smollett.
Empire show's such a mess.
Right, but you know, Jessie Smollett, who I guess came out on the show as well, and like we saw the trials and tribulations of like that whole situation with his dad and stuff like that. And so I think it was good though to have someone who
because it was from the black community. No, it's true though, because
exactly.
like you don't really see like people in the black community, like if it's like families, like happy families, like straight parents, like everyone's family is straight, but seeing that was actually quite interesting. No, you're right. And so I think that also helped a lot of people like understand though, like generally Empire, when the show first came out, it's just finished,
like it's just had its series finale, but
Thank God.
when it first came out though, like it was big, like Empire was huge. Big, it was everywhere.
People were like, black rich people,
show.
yes, yeah, they loved it all.
It was big, it was so huge everywhere, and so to have that in forefront, you know, he was one of the main characters, and to see that play out on screen, and I think it was actually very real because it was very difficult for him, you know, but he had a boyfriend, but he hadn't even really come to terms with it himself in the show, so you know, and seeing that all play out and seeing, you know, everything, so that I think was actually really useful. So again, if you I mean, I don't recommend watching past the like second season, but you know,
I mean, that's where I dropped off.
But yeah, also then to talk about social in sort of mainstream media, I want to sort of talk about a few like controversies, because I think it's really hard. So we've got two things to talk about. We talk about being black in general, because that's really the focus of our podcast, like black people and championing black people from all different communities, and people who are weird but black and beautiful and wonderful. And obviously we're talking about LGBTQIA today, so plus story today, and so I wanted to talk about Kevin Hart's situation. So for those that don't know, which I'm surprised if you don't, because I feel like it was everywhere. Essentially Kevin Hart was supposed to host the 2019 Oscars, and he basically he accepted it and everything, and then, you know, there was lots of outrage because he had said some things that were homophobic in the past, and this caused like a lot of uproar. So things that he said were between 2009 and 2011, and so 8 years prior. He had apologized for it. However, people say that they hadn't seen this apology, but I believe that they were able to find it, and you know, he spoke about it a number of times, and since that point, I believe in 2011 he hadn't said anything problematic since then. But yeah, essentially he said those things, and then when it came out, the Oscars basically said, look, you can either apologize publicly, or, you know, you can sort of step down from hosting. So he decided to step down because he's like, look, I've already addressed this, which I thought was an interesting move. So yeah, I guess I want to get your thoughts on it. So that's in a nutshell the situation. After that, actually, I think
we have to add like what happened after though, because then
so after that, right? Okay, cool. So he basically stepped down from hosting. He then decided to go on to Ellen DeGeneres, who obviously is quite a big, openly gay person, like media personality, and where she basically was just like on his side, and like they spoke about it, and she basically called online critics haters for the way that, you know, they were talking and treating him, given that he had apologized for what he had said. And then therefore this drew criticism from her LGBTQ fans, telling her that she did not get the right to be a moral arbiter on behalf of the community. And so one of the people that's particularly spoke about it was Don Lemon, who is quite a, you know, popular CNN. He's a news host, he's black and he's openly gay, and he was just like, apologizing and moving on does not make the world a better place for people who are gay or who are transgender. So then after that, he then did issue another apology on his radio show, quite a heartfelt one, saying he really does apologize. It hurt, like shit hurt, because he knew because of what he's been through as well, understanding a place of being being oppressed, obviously because he's black, and apologized actually 2 more times. And then basically the last situation, I believe, or last part of the situation anyway, is he was on the Stephen Colbert show. He's quite a famous late night talk show host, where he was just like, I apologize again, and I apologize after the apology. It's just like it keeps going on. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what happened. What are your thoughts?
First of all, I want to say that like my thoughts are irrelevant to this just because I'm not from the community. I know you want to know my opinion, I will give it, but yeah, first of all, like, it's not my place because I'm not from the community, so it's not my right to be upset or not upset by it. I would say I understood where the LGBTQIA plus community was coming from, especially when it comes to like Ellen DeGeneres, because she was like essentially trying to be a mouthpiece for the whole community, which is just like not, like, I don't think she should have done it at all, because she doesn't speak for everyone. And that happens a lot with, like, especially when like people come out about have been like racist in the past. Like this happened with Jeffree Star when he was like, I've apologized, and his white fans like, oh, it's okay, we accept your apologies. It's like, well, it wasn't for you, and it's not for them to accept either. So, and
that's
also,
a good point.
Yeah, so like
That's such a good point.
Yeah, so we can't be like, people can't just be like, oh yeah, Ellen's come out and said that it's okay, so it must be fine. Like, no, people are entitled to feel the way they want to feel. That's just how I feel about it personally.
But I think this speaks to, so my point to this is that obviously you and I are both not a part, not obviously, but you and I are both not a part of the community.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that we can't speak on behalf of anyone else. However, I guess, as you know, from a standpoint of being a member of the public, and obviously going through similar things, going through similar things, you know, through being black and as you said, that great example with regards to Jeffree Star. You know, if he's apologized 2-3 times now, and we're going to take Ellen out of the situation, because it's like saying, you know, a white person who's racist talks to a black person, and then it's all that's okay. It's like that's not. But you know, if he's apologized 2 or 3 times now, do you think it's like, do you understand why? Like it seems that people are not accepting it, or some people are not accepting it. I personally, for me personally, if I've seen someone like make a mistake and then apologize for it profusely, and then obviously continue not to do it, because the point is he can apologize all he likes, but if he was to continue to make remarks, then it would mean nothing. But like he's, you know, he's not said anything else offensive to my knowledge. I've not read anything online about it. I said to my knowledge. So I haven't read anything online about that. I've not seen anyone say anything about him saying anything else like more offensive since then. So at this stage, just like, surely we can accept the apology and move on.
I don't know. It's not my apology to accept. I think he's like apologized and stuff, but I mean, like I said, like I'm not I know you want me to give my opinion, but I'm just like, it's not for me to say anything about. I just agree with like what people from the community are telling me. Sorry, my voice went.
I feel like
I would say like if someone in a general sense, yes, maybe if someone's apologized, but then like in the back of my head personally, I'm sort of like, well, if you've said that if you've said that in the first place, like what got you to that point where you were even thinking were you even thinking to ever say anything like that? Like what was in your head to get you to that point?
I think we've spoken about the fact though that like there's not an understanding there.
No, exactly.
And bear in mind that those remarks were said to me. So let's be very clear. That, like, I'm not trying to let me speak clear. I'm not trying to get you to say it's okay, it's not, because as you said a number of times, we're not from the community, and that's not the point. And I feel like people listening will understand that. What I'm trying to get an understanding on is that as a group of people that are being oppressed as well, being that we're black and that we're women, you know, and so this speaks to in general. So maybe if I make it more general, you might feel more comfortable like answering the question. But like you know, we've spoken about cancel culture in previous episodes. We've spoken about obviously sexual assault and things like that in previous episodes. Like do you think that like at a certain stage, you know, if someone were to say something harmful to, let's say, the black community, and then they were like, rah, we understand the error of our way. So a great example that would be like Donnie Wahlberg, for example, or sorry, Mark Wahlberg, sorry, who was like very, very openly racist back in the day. You know, is it to a stage now where it's
what I would say is personally, I'd just always be on the defense and like just sort of waiting for them to do the next thing. Like I'd probably be like, okay, like fine, I hope that you're taking the steps to like unlearn that behavior, and I hope that you're trying to like make a difference for that community that you have offended. But in the back of my head, I'd always just have that in the back of my head being like, well, they said this before, if they say it again, I'm not going to be surprised. I've sort of just always be on the fence. That's just how I feel about it. So yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of sort of again in mainstream media, I want to talk a bit about sport. So in sport in America, you know, and just in general, you know, we know our sports are quite sort of male, quite like, I don't want to use the word like chauvinistic, but you know, very like sort of male dominated industry. And so you know they're always in locker rooms and there's lots of inappropriate things that are said about people, like, you know, lots of different things. And I'm gonna actually talk about offensive language after this. But basically in 2013, I believe, the first sort of like openly gay, or one of the first openly gay, I should say, athletes came out. So he was an NBA player. Yeah, he's called Jason Collins, and he was an NBA center, and yeah, he sort of came out and he said that he was the first active gay athlete in a male professional sport, team sport, and so that's a huge thing, because I mean, it basically it caused a ripple in the industry, you know. It's just like, you know, because in the industry and even in rap as well, like it just wasn't cool, right? Like it wasn't cool to be, you know. We've got Tyler the Creator, he's another one who, you know, his lack for a better kind of said he's bi, I guess, kind of is my understanding. And you know, people like, you know, Eminem for example have said things that are like offensive, right? Towards him. So, you know, these things obviously are like considered like not cool, and they're considered like, it's and so I want to sort of unpick that, because, you know, I wonder, like, why is that, like, you know, why is it that we, you know, we have industries where it's like, okay, like this is like absolutely like not allowed, or thought to be not allowed. Like it's to me it's like, it's really interesting, like, and apparently, you know, according to him, there's lots of male athletes, you know, who are gay, but like, but are just like so
it's
closeted.
So interesting. I was talking to my boyfriend we were talking about football the other day, and like we were like, are there any openly like gay footballers? And I was like, I don't think so. And like there must be so many, because they're just afraid
for
to
our American listeners, we're referring to soccer.
Soccer.
Because I was going to say as well, the NFL, right? In each NFL team, there's probably about 50 players. Yeah. And you can't tell me there's 32 NFL teams. Like, there's 32 NFL teams, yeah. So that's 30 times 50, which is approximately about 1,500 players. You can't tell me that there's not one of those players that identifies as not straight, right? Do
you know what I think?
I believe there's a few that are out now, actually, but that obviously I'm talking. But back in the day, this is 2013. He was like the first one to sort of openly come out with it.
Wow.
And say, you know, he declares himself as like, you know, he doesn't feel any way about it, and you know, and that's it. And I think he was very brave for that, because you know, it had not been done before.
Definitely
not been done before. And so this brings us on to my dear friend Charlemagne, because I just wanted to kind of talk about the fact that he actually was one of the sort of main people in media to be in support of that. He, you know, said being gay is not a crime, so he doesn't even understand like why it's a conversation. I want to bring it up because I guess from my understanding, there's people in the community who have found things that he says like quite dangerous, which, again, I'm not in community, so of course there's things that he might have said in the past or might have said that I consider to be dangerous. Afia feels quite strongly about this. We've had a conversation about this off air. But my point to this is that, and that this kind of ties into the Kevin Hart situation, which is why, by the way, she's not speaking right now. But it ties into the Kevin Hart situation, which is that, you know, if people do say things that are dangerous to a certain community, so whether it be the LGBTQIA plus community, or whether it be the black community, or women or whomever, and they actually completely switch their thinking and you know, become advocates, if you like, which I would say, to be honest with you, he's an advocate at this stage. I found quite a few articles where he's spoken to just big magazines, GQ, Vibe, in support of, you know, he was one of the first people to talk about how what Eminem said like doesn't make sense regarding Tyler the Creator and things like that. And obviously on the Breakfast Club they had lots of different trans people and gay people come up and things like that. So it's like, you know, I feel like, is there redemption? Like, can someone change? Can someone's thinking change? Like, that's the question. Do you think someone's thinking can change, Afia?
Do I think Charlemagne the God's thinking can change? That's what you're asking me, really, though, isn't it?
I'm asking that question on air.
I think that my answer would be the same, though. Like, yes, maybe the opinions can change, and like, I know that you've said to me that he's done this or that for the community, but it's still in the back of my head. I'm always just going to be like thinking of that thing that you've done before, and just like, I always just believe the words of those from the community, and like those from the community are still like to this day, because we obviously had this conversation off air, and Charlie was like, look it up, and I was just like looking up, and I was also looking up some opinions of people online and stuff.
I looked up as well, though, but I didn't see anything.
Yeah, people were still saying, because I was searching on Twitter, and people were still saying he's problematic, he's this, and they're like bringing up all like different videos. To me. So people were still like so feeling aware.
I would like to see it. So off air, send it to me, because
definitely.
Yeah, send it to me, because I would like to see this, because I genuinely was supposed to, because I was searching both sides. I was like, okay, I literally typed in like his thoughts on gay community, and I'm not gonna lie to you, like the first 5 things that came up were like all things of him sort of speaking in support of them, and and like from spanning from here, which was 2013, to like very, very recently as well. So I'll be interested to see whether and actually that's a good point as well though, and with things like Twitter and tweets and things like that, obviously there's been a big thing, I think we spoke about it before, about people bringing up old tweets a lot recently, and maybe
that's what it is though, is maybe it's older stuff, because I know
so I don't think it's a bad thing though, because at the end of the day, the things have been said, and so they should be highlighted. So let's be clear, like I actually think that if you said something in the past, that like it should be brought up again. However, if you are doing that though, be clear about whether this is still a situation, because I can say that I really felt like I did research like online and I didn't see anything like recently, but not to even focus on him, but I did want to speak about him. I think we need to get to a place where people really just don't focus on hurting other people, and I think that's like the message that I would want to like
definitely
to highlight here.
I think, and especially in the Black community, like you've said this like so much throughout the episode, like we're already like struggling, we're already like fighting so many things. Like I just sit and imagine like, okay, I'm Black and I'm a woman, so that's two things already against me. If I was a Black trans woman, like I couldn't even imagine like the level of like stuff that I would be facing. And why would me now as like a Black woman want to put more onto a Black trans woman, or like anyone who's gay and Black? Like we already have it so hard as it is. We can't then like just put another like 10,000 bricks on someone. Like it's just, we have to sit together as a community, and like our struggle is our struggle. Black lives matter, all Black lives matter, not just Black straight lives. We have to remember that should be at the forefront of everything that Black people do. All Black people matter all the time. So and
with that as well, I want to, we spoke about this very briefly earlier, but I don't know if you've done any research on this, places where it's legal to be gay.
Yes, I have.
So
let's because there is a lot.
Let's talk about that.
There's a lot.
Yeah, no, I've seen there's
I'm
like
disappointed in.
Really?
Barbados.
I mean, I feel like we're disappointed.
Well, all of them.
I think
all
we're disappointed everywhere again.
But I mean, there's some places you're like, not surprising. But there's some places I'm like, really? Right. Let me get it up. Do you know what?
So I have done also some research on it as well, and there's basically a lot of places in Africa, a lot of places in Asia. Of course, a lot of the sort of Muslim states are like they fit into that category. I don't feel like we should read off a list, but maybe we can just do like
there's
regions.
A lot. So there's like the Americas, they say. Barbados, which I'm really surprised at.
Is it just Barbados, or is it the Caribbean?
Well, I mean, there's a few Americas. So Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica. I think it's Nevis.
And let's talk about that though, because Jamaica, I mean, they've been using the word.
Yes,
I don't want to say anything.
Yeah, we know. Yeah.
What words?
The B man.
That word. And then there's also and that became also quite a colloquial word there, because people used to say, oh, you're B, right? And then also there's the famous song man, the C. So
and you lot, I am Jamaican, so Jamaicans don't come for me. The people are like, don't do that, I'm Jamaican as well, so I know about it.
But there's that too, which I get to understand is like, really hurtful.
The homophobia problem in the Caribbean is something else. Very far behind is what I would say. Very far behind. And I was surprised because in Barbados, it's my family, so like when I'm with my family, I always think that everyone thinks the same, because my family's like quite open-minded, and they're like, oh yeah, like whatever sort of thing. But yeah, like seeing Barbados on that list there, that's really surprised me. But then like it also hasn't, because the Caribbean is so far behind. But I think because like those particular places in the Caribbean, I'm sure it's the same for Africa, it's so like religion dominated. Like Christianity is at the forefront of everything, and I do think that's like a big reason of why homophobia is still like so strong over there. And also like I think it's also seen as emasculating, especially if a man is gay. And I think that goes back to the point where you said about why in the industry do not a lot of men come forward about it. And I think it's because it's seen as emasculating. And I think in like in the Caribbean culture, like typically the man should be like head of the household, like this strong like hyper masculine sort of guy. If they were like happen to be gay, then that would completely emasculate them, and like it will be this whole negative thing. And I think that's really the reason why people have such a horrible like negative stance in it, particularly in the Caribbean, and also in like the media or like industries, sports industries, music industries. It's all, I think it comes down to that, really, just emasculation. Yeah, that's what I would say. I don't know how you feel about Africa.
Well, yeah, I feel like a lot of Africa is still like, yeah, bro, you can't even be in like you can't even indulge in sex activity, let alone marriage or anything like that, which is interesting. And there's some countries as well in Africa. So for example, Ghana, it's illegal for men, but it's legal for females, which is interesting.
Oh.
So why is it so in for example in Ghana it's illegal for men, and if you're found out to be indulging in same-sex activity, you can be in prison for 10 years, but females just can't, which is like, I find that really interesting. And then for my country, Sierra Leone,
what are they saying?
It's the same thing. So males, it's illegal up to life imprisonment, potentially, but females, it's fine.
Do you think that that's because of the sexualization of lesbians? And I think we didn't even talk about that, but that's a whole other thing as well. Like typically, like when men hear like, oh yeah, you're a lesbian, yeah, let me get involved, and it's like, no, we're lesbians. No. And I think lesbians are definitely like hypersexualized and like seen as this thing where like, I think it comes down to like porn, doesn't it? So like a lot of men love to watch like lesbian porn. So yeah, I think.
But
do you think that's why?
Well, that's interesting because, like, you know, I feel like people indulge in like threesomes and that. So is that illegal? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, that's true.
And they might not necessarily be, you know, lesbian or gay or whatever. They're just indulging in the threesome activity. Is that illegal?
It's just all fucking.
I guess it might be though. Like according to this, I guess it might be. But just to say, for West Africa, pretty much unanimously across West Africa, the recognition of same-sex unions is illegal. The same-sex marriage is illegal. Adoption by same-sex couples is illegal. LGBT people are not allowed to serve openly in the military. And discrimination laws concerning sexual orientation is still happening, and laws concerning gender identity and expression is still happening. So pretty much that's unanimously across West Africa. So I mean, in short, you know, we've got a long way to go.
There's a lot of injustices, still happening.
A long way to go. I mean, I feel like, you know, and that actually can lead quite nicely to, or not nicely actually, but to offensive language. There's lots of different offensive language that we hear about, namely like things like the F word, or people saying like tranny, for example, or you know, misusing pronouns, which you spoke about earlier. And that's a big one. And also people saying, so a big one is no homo. So you know, people say something and they'll be like no homo, like no homo. And to be honest with you, I can even say that I probably said something like that before.
I doubt not in school. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Do you remember when we used to call?
Homo, like,
do you remember when we used to call like, oh no, that's gay, that's like really gay?
Yeah,
people
exactly.
say shit like that all the time, and like obviously as you get older you realise that's just ignorant. But no, definitely.
So in terms of like the no homo, it says there's like a really good page from UC Davis, which is a university in America, and it says it stresses the speaker's heterosexuality, masculinity and or other traits to avoid being perceived as LGBTQIA+. It goes to great lengths to avoid association with anything queer, reinforces that to be LGBTQIA+ is bad. So that's like the kind of thinking behind when saying no homo, supposedly, which is why it is offensive. And there's lots of different words here and lots of different things, so definitely research it and see, because there was a few things that I read here I was like, oh wow, like I didn't realize that this would be so offensive. And so I think I do think that to that, as I said before, like I think it's going to take someone maybe who is an advocate for the community to or something like that to help spread the word and educate, because the reality of it is that I don't think it's a focus for a lot of people. I don't, and especially where, as I said before, there's so many other things like issues happening. I'm not saying this is any less or more at all, because it's not about that. It's the end of the day, it is an issue, but I think that, to be honest with you, from speaking with people and just to get an understanding, I just feel that people who might not be who are not in the community, and very much similar to white people, right, with black people, they just don't think it's they're not trying to do the extra work to understand or anything like that. And I don't know, man, I feel like at the end of the day, if you're not gonna like do the extra work and sort of be an advocate, then just let people then just let people live their lives. Like it shouldn't affect you. It shouldn't affect. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing, to be honest with you, but what I will say is that there's absolutely no need to discriminate against anyone for anything. So you know, if you see someone then as long as they're living their life happily, that's really all that should matter. That's real, honestly. That's how I feel personally.
100%.
Like,
I would second
I'm not tripping off what anyone else is doing. I'm not gonna lie.
I would just say that I just think love is a beautiful thing, and like it just doesn't matter who you love, so long as that person treats you well and they respect you, then gender, sexual identity, all of that stuff, it just doesn't matter. So yeah, that's my opinion on it.
And with that,
so
this is an incredibly long episode.
Yeah, I know, this is our longest
it's all
one,
good.
I think.
Yeah, it's all good. It's important information.
Definitely
Let us know
I hope
your
you guys
thoughts.
been informed, like, for sure.
Yeah,
I really hope so.
Definitely been a whirlwind from different aspects, but I mean, as we said, and even with all the topics that we talk about, especially during second season, like, we could talk for a lot longer. There's obviously so much to talk about. We're talking about years and years and years of history and information and stuff like that, but we hope that you've taken something from it, and I think the main thing is spread love, stay alternative, and thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.